Hey everyone, Tim here. I'm here today to talk to you about brand story. Right, and like most of my presentations, I like to start with a little bit of a definition, just to make sure that we're on the same page. The best brand definition or definition of brand that I've heard in, and one that I unashamedly borrow from, is by my good friend Matt Neighbours. And this is: brand is the meaning that your customers attach to you and your offering. Brand is the meaning that your customers attach to you and your offering. So that's brand. So let's define story. Story shouldn't really need any definition. It's something that we as humans have been involved with since the day we were born. In fact, every human has, which is what kind of makes it powerful. In fact, it's been around so long. I think Aristotle was one of the first people to write and talk about the power of story to persuade. In 330 BC published Poetics, which outlined ethos, pathos, and logos, and the three-act structure, which is still used today to create stories. But the story we're talking about today, right, is strategic storytelling. It's storytelling for business, right? For business, story is the most effective way of getting your ideas into the world. It aligns leaderships, it builds tribes, it launches innovation, products, services, it attracts the right employees into your organization, and it inspires great work from them. So now that we understand what brand and what story means, let's get into the nitty-gritty. So strategy comes before story. It's a bit like the foundations of how you tell your brand story effectively is understanding what your brand strategy is. And brand strategy is kind of simple. It only answers 4 questions. Number 1, why do you do it? Why do you exist beyond making money? So there's been a lot of talk and a lot of trend about purpose, right? Purpose-driven companies at this time. And all right, let's explore that, right? Let's explore that for a little bit. So purpose, it could mean you have got some massive ecological or humanitarian good your business does, which is a beautiful thing if you do have that driving you. It's a beautiful thing. But purpose doesn't mean just that. Purpose can be as simple as meeting a customer need or solving a customer problem for the people you choose to serve. Like, this is still purpose driven. It's still business that does good beyond making money. Making money is a result, and it's not important to brand. Brand is not transactional, right? It understanding the why question of your business gives us the reason why other people should care about the work you do. Why should anybody care about your brand? So the second question is, who is it for? I won't dwell on this, as we covered a lot of understanding your market stuff in the previous marketing planning and marketing effectiveness roundtable. But for those of you who didn't attend the last one, the last roundtable I did, here's a quick recap. It's very valuable to do 2 things when answering who is it for. Number 1, build a picture of your ideal customer. There's been recent moves in this sort of process in the creative industry to ignore demographics, and I suggest you do the same. Focus on behaviors and psychographics. Focus on the human elements, the emotive elements, the personality-driven elements of your ideal customer, because that's how people make buying decisions, whether they're in B2B, whether they're in B2C. We all make decisions in the same part of our brain, and it's the part that controls language. Yes, we justify it with logic, but you need to understand the person. The logic is the easy bit, right? If you're looking at B2B sales, for example, they only want to do one of three things. They're only worried about market, money, or exposure, right? They want to drive up profit and turnover and save costs, drive down costs. They want to increase market share and they want to reduce time to market, right? They want to increase retention, so customer staff retention, and they want to decrease risk in exposure. Right? That's all. It's kind of simple. So let's build a picture of our ideal customer. It'll be super worthwhile. You need to do it well enough that you could recognize the person. You need to really understand them. You need to personify them, it's called. Like, there's a great example, actually, of that. I did this piece of work, actually it must have been January, February now, with a client, and they named one of their personas, one of their ideal clients as called a Justin, right? And they rang me after a day at an event. I went, oh my God, that was amazing. There were so many Justins everywhere, right? I couldn't help but be super pleased, and it was really good. Now, it's a really good living embodiment. Everybody understands who your ideal customer is if you give them, like, make them real, give them a name, give them a personality. And the second point, I did say there was a second point, is spend time understanding your category, your market, your segments, and your target. This is what was covered previously in the marketing planning roundtable I did for you guys. But just in case you missed it, let's have a little example of this, right? So let's use Starbucks, a brand we should all know, because up near the Ingenuity Lab, there is a Starbucks. So Starbucks, right? Starbucks category, the category of people they're in, right? The market they want to serve at the broadest level is the category of coffee drinkers. They really want to serve people who like drinking coffee, right? But that's an awful lot of people. It's an awful lot of people, right? So to be a bit more valuable, they really need to understand their chosen market, right? So everybody who drinks coffee could be a customer of Starbucks, yeah, sure. But to make it more viable, it's really the out-of-home coffee drinker, isn't it? Because I don't know about your houses or where you live, but there's definitely no Starbucks in my house or in any of the houses I've lived in. So I have to be out of home and a coffee drinker to take full advantage of a Starbucks. And I know now they do Starbucks coffee at home, but let's look at the main business model, right? Let's not get into the woods. So now you understand the market of the out-of-home coffee drinker. But that, do you know what? That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people's stuff. And it's great to understand how much the opportunity within your market, so you can measure the share of market that you have. But really, to drive action, you need to define it a little bit more. You need to define it into target segments or customer segments. And customer segments are smaller focused groups of your market. For example, for Starbucks, we understand that all out-of-home coffee drinkers is a lot of people, but ideally we can segment that further to morning commuters. So people who are out and about, going into a city maybe for a job, and they want a coffee and a Danish before work. It's a really good target segment. Still quite a lot of people in there, right? But broad enough and actionable enough that you can develop a really good proposition. But not only them, right? They also want the same workers, maybe the city workers, maybe the commuters who are traveling around lunch and want a lunch bite. But not only them, there's the people in between, right? The people who maybe want to catch up with their friends and family and mates, or have a meeting maybe in the middle, like in those mid-morning, mid-afternoon time, and they just want somewhere with a decent Wi-Fi connection and a comfy seat to have a good coffee and a cake, right? So the casual, the shoppers, let's say, right, the meeting people. So they're three good segments of Starbucks' market, right? But then to define it even more, to be really actionable and really measurable with our marketing, we want to understand our targets, right? And our targets are people we go after. We go after them with marketing, performance-driven campaigns, right? And target segments for Starbucks would be something really specific. So let's get granular. Let's get people who work in the City of London in Canary Wharf, right? Target them to get to the Starbucks at the Canary Wharf tube station before they go to work. Super granular subsection of the segments of the market and of the category. And that's how it works. That's the order that you have to understand. And you do have to understand all of them, because the category and the market are really good for long-term brand building, right? All the money's in the long term. Great businesses are built over time, right? You need to understand the broader brand opportunity of your market, and segments and targets are used for more action, short-based, target-driven campaigns, right? Target-driven storytelling. That's why you need to do all of those things. So on to question 3 at the bottom of the screen there. How will you show up? This is all about 2 words mainly. Actually 4 words. Differentiation, distinctiveness, positioning, and archetypes. So let's have a look. Differentiation. So differentiation is, what are your points of difference when compared to an alternative solution to the thing that you provide, right? How are you different? What makes you different? Are you bigger, faster, smaller, tastier? I don't know, right? What makes you different? Points of differentiation in your market, right? These are really good ways to show up, right? They make you you. You're not just another commodity, right? People choose for a reason, because they're differentiated or distinctive. So distinctive is very similar to differentiation, but it's the aesthetics, right? It's, how are we visibly different as our brand? How are we visibly different? How do we show up that's distinctive in our market, right? If you look at, there's some amazing brands that do this, right? Nike's one of them with the swoosh and their slogan, just do it. McDonald's is the same with the golden arches and I'm loving it. Right, there's loads of distinctive assets. What are your distinctive assets? Right, what are your logos? What are your brand codes or colors? What slogans do you have? What sort of shapes do you use? Like, what makes you distinctive? Because the more, there's a bit of theory here, I think it's called the von Restorff effect, which looks at the most distinctive and differentiated in a market is chosen more, right? Stands out amongst similar kind of products, services, that sort of thing, which is really good, right? You need both differentiation and distinctiveness. Distinctiveness relies on your creativity. Be a bit braver, right? A bit ballsier about stuff. And then there's positioning. So an important point to remember with positioning: the position of your brand, right, exists only in the mind of your customer. like the meaning they attach to you, right? We can try and nudge and manage and cement our position through the branding process, through the management of that meaning, right? But the position is controlled by the customer. We can only try and manage it. We can only try and suggest. We can only try and nudge. So we can say we want to hold this position in the market. But if our actions don't ring true, if our product or service or quality of experience isn't good enough, then nothing we say in our marketing, in our stories will matter. It's owned by the customer. And then I mentioned another thing, another word called archetypes. Now, it's its whole own thing, archetypal branding. So we're not going to spend a shed load of time on it today. But archetypal branding came from Carl Jung. It's Jungian archetypes. There are a few different types of archetypes, but Jungian is the one that we're referring to today, of which there are 12. Right? It's really good to understand the role you play in your customer's life as archetypes. Right? If you Google brand archetypes, they will come up in droves. Right? There are a bunch of brand archetypes. Again, we're not covering loads of it today, but it does help you define things like tone of voice and content style and brand personality and things like that in there. If you've got questions on archetypes, maybe we can cover it after the main section of the talk if it's something you're specific interested in. But for now, let's go on to question 4. What will you do? This is the final question to help you understand your brand strategy and is our gateway from strategy to story. Right, the answer should be your brand manifesto. A manifesto is such a great thing for a brand to have, right? It's a powerful statement about who you are and what you're going to achieve. Right? It's a manifesto. It drives action. It's a motive. It's inspirational. Should be amazing. A manifesto should make promises to your customers, to your stakeholders, to your colleagues. Now, promises is an interesting thing. I use a little tool, a little framework I use for client work as well. Right. So something that you might want to note down is what promises do you make to your customers and you can put out into the world? What promises do you make to your colleagues, your team that you can make public? Right? And the beauty of promise is that it doesn't matter what age, gender, ethnicity, job role, experience, status. We all understand the words I promise and what it means to break a promise. Right? Imagine the quality of the work if you promise to do all this stuff. Like, how hard are you going to try? How good is the experience going to be? Because if you promise something and then you break it to a customer, bad news for your brand. So once you understand the promises you make to your brand, you can plan what actions do you need to take by asking what needs to be true to keep this promise. What resources do I need in place? What assets do I need in place? What does the experience have to be like for me to deliver what I've promised to my customers? So that's kind of strategy, right? And you may wonder why it's focused around the point of a compass. And it's kind of a visual reference. It's a metaphor I like to use because your brand strategy should be a compass that always drives you to your true north, right? It always keeps you on the right track because there's so much activity and stuff that you could do as a business, as an entrepreneur, especially in the creative side, especially in marketing, branding, storytelling. But referring back and really understanding what your brand strategy is, your compass, will help you always keep to the right path. That's why I like the visual representation of a compass. So now we are onto a little framework called the Story Star Framework. Excuse my horrific design skills. I am not good at that stuff. But this is a little framework I like to use to help people understand how to do commercial strategic storytelling. So let's run round each part. At the top there, it starts is the heart of the story. Every brand story should have a heart. This is your manifesto we've just looked at, right? This is the thing that drives you forward. This is the idea you're trying to get into the world. Right, what is it? Is it your purpose? Is it a just cause? Is it a problem solving? Is it a need? Is it a mission? Is it a vision? Whatever it is, right? Your manifesto should be at the heart of your story, right? Because you need the narrative to sound, the power of narrative, the power of story to get that idea to to stick in the mind of the people you choose to serve. Right, so the heart is really important, and we should have covered that in brand strategy by now. And next up is origin, right? This answers the question, what was, right? If we're going back to Aristotle and the 3-act structure, you can frame a 3-act structure really simply in storytelling by answering what was, what is, and what will be. And that's what we'll do today. So origin story, like any superhero, right? Like any person or brand or thing on a mission, there's an origin story, there's a backstory. Where does this come from? How did you end up here, and why should anyone care? Tell your origin story. If people check out my website, I wrote my origin story on there. Not that it's super interesting, but it's mine. But you can have a go from there, right? And it answers what was, right? How have you come to this point? Why should anyone care about this idea? Right, and then it comes to resonate, the next point. This answers the question, what is? Right, this is the middle of the story. This is the empathetic bit. This is the bit where you show understanding of your market about the challenges they face and how your brand helps them with it. Right? Resonate. You've got to resonate. You've got to show empathy. You've got to go, we've had this brilliant idea. And it's important because we understand you face X and Y challenge. We understand you're striving to do this thing, and we can help you with it. Like, you've got to make your idea relevant to the people you choose to serve. This is why understanding your market in the brand strategy, answering who, is really important. Because without that bit, how are you going to understand them well enough that your story will resonate, to tell the right story to the right people? Next up is inspire. This answers the question, what could be? Right? What could be? Paint a picture of what the world would be like with your idea adopted by the people you choose to serve. Right? At this point, the point of this is to get people to ask, what's next? Right? What's going on now? What can we do about it? I want to take action. I've understood about your idea because you've told me the background, you've told me your origin. And I know why it's important to me, because it's resonated. You've been empathetic. You really understand my situation and how your idea can help. But now you want to paint a picture and go, but with my idea adopted, we can do X, Y, and Z. All this amazing stuff will happen. Your problem will be solved. You will reduce your costs. You will increase turnover. You will reduce time to market. You will increase market share. You will increase customer retention. You will reduce your risk. Right? What will be? This is how you get people to take action. Right, with origin, resonate and inspire, the beginning, the middle, the end. What was, what is, what will be. You have the bones of your story, right? You have those questions written, right? You're able to communicate it in whatever format you want. So next up comes one of the hardest tasks in brand storytelling, and that's simplify. right? A great task here to use is to use, it's a classic actually. I think it's been around for many years. It's certainly not mine. But is to do an exercise called 50, 15 and 5. That's 501505. You start by writing a 50-word description, then a 15-word description, then a 5-word description of your idea or version of your story. The reason being that we have a lack of attention, right? Attention's hard to come by. You have to earn attention, right? You have to get people's curiosity up. You have to be differentiated and distinctive in your brand, and eye-catching to catch people's attention, right? So you may have to explain or put over your story in a sentence. You may only have a few seconds. There's a bunch of thinking about effective numbers here, actually. There's a whole piece of thinking and pieces of work around 10 words. Like there's a mate of mine works for IBM, actually. He's an author and has a podcast that's finished now, but it's still good listening, called 10 Words by Jeremy Waite. And he analyzes all famous people from Beyonce to Barack Obama to Vivienne Westwood to Steve Jobs, right, and finds their 10-word statements, right? There's a thing about 10-word statements that's going on in the world that are really, really effective. The best communicators use 10-word statements. So get big ideas over with small words and short sentences. That's the key, right? And then there's the power of threes. Like people, humans, like I have no science behind it. We like things in 3 and 5s, right? That there's been no end of kind of website studies that if you have 3 or 5 bullet points, it's better. On a presentation, you're not allowed to have more than 6 points on a slide. It's never the number of slides that's the issue. It's the number of data points on the slide, right? There's loads of examples that 3, 5, 10 are good short words, but it's being concise, right? It's having the clarity of your brand strategy and the story you need to tell and the audience you're trying to reach that will help you communicate clearly and concisely. Help people get to a point of going, oh, what's next? Being curious and want to know more. That's the beauty of what story is. And then finally, there's amplify. Amplify is my favorite one-word marketing strategy currently. Get your story out into the world. My favorite analogy here is to market, to storytell like a musician, right? Musicians are the best storytellers for many, many reasons, right? My favorite reason, and the reason we're focused on today, is that they work bloody hard at telling their story, right? They come up with a story that they care passionately about, that they love, right? A song. Their story is a song, right? And they take this piece of content and they get it out on the radio, they get publicity for it, they share it to their fans, they have interviews about it, they write about it, they record videos on it, they distribute it everywhere. They make it work hard to the people that want to hear it, their audience, right? If we only could market a bit more like a musician, put that much effort into it, not just whack it out on Instagram and hope people find it, right? That's creatively lazy. Let's make it hard. You've worked hard to ferment your idea into a solid brand strategy. You've worked hard to formulate a story, an effective story around it, right? You've got the right story. You understand the right people. You've just got to get it to them at the right time on the right channels. A message always beats media. Because when you're a storyteller, the format doesn't matter, right? the formats, the channels you use, the format of content you use should be dictated by understanding the people in your audience. Right? Don't flog away at building an amazing Snapchat channel if the people you want to serve aren't in there in droves. If they're in Dullard LinkedIn groups, go to the Dullard LinkedIn groups. Right? When you're big enough, when you have a tribe of your own, maybe you can take people over to Snapchat. But in the beginning, right, go where the people are. Tell the story to the people who will care. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is brand and story, or brand story. I'm going to open it up to questions because I know there's a bunch in there, even though there's only 2 slides of content. So I'll open it up to questions now. Thank you very much.